Hey there, you awesome people! I hope your day has been nothing short of fantastic. Welcome back to a brand new episode of What If Deku ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi. Izuku used to be quirkless, but that all changed when he sunk his teeth into an unusual fruit, granting him the power to stretch his body like rubber. With this newfound ability, he's on a quest to become the ultimate hero. Don't forget to shower some appreciation onto the incredible author responsible for this fanfiction. The link is conveniently waiting for you in the description box down below. If you're totally vibing with this what-if scenario, drop me a comment and let your thoughts be known. And while you're at it, don't miss out on other mind-blowing what-ifs on this channel. Alright, without further ado, let's dive straight into this video. It was a peaceful morning in Japan. The end of the school year was approaching for all students, meaning it would be a time of transition for most youths. However, the day would far be peaceful. 98% of Japan's heroes were preparing to raid against the Paranormal Liberation Front, and had been split into 3 groups. The vast majority was sent near Dekai, where most of the grunts were located. Another group was near Jaku Hospital, working alongside with the police department. The rest were to arrest the other smaller bases the PLF had. At the headquarters where all the operations would be conducted, Toshinori stood there with Night Eye along with Bubble Girl and La Brava. La Brava, begin the hacking sequence, ordered Night Eye. Alright, but Gentle better be safe and in a place where he can shine, huffed La Brava as she began hacking into Skeptic's server. Despite having been hacked, Skeptic maintained that he was unbeatable in the digital world and barely changed his codes and logarithm. La Brava easily broke through them without him noticing. Endeavor, being the current #1 hero, would be participating in the Jaku raid. Melissa had volunteered to assist the heroes at Dekai for their final checks for their gear. Even the hero course students, down to the first years, were being mobilized for this operation, which was unheard of. Hawks, the double agent, had been working tirelessly to get this information for them all, and they would not let him down. Meanwhile, in the streets, the citizens were slowly noticing the rather low number of heroes patrolling the areas. Some of the heroes, such as Slide and Go, had no idea what was going on, whereas everyone thought Slide and Go in confusion. There had been no notice from the HPSC about any sort of recalls, and none of their spies within the hero department, including Hawks, who was their highest level infiltrator, much to his own disdain, had said anything about this. Slide and Go's thought process was halted when he felt arms suddenly reach around him, closing him in and tightening quickly around his neck. Slide and Go quickly looked to see Death Arms had been the one responsible for this, and was about to ask when he felt Death Arms' grip tighten even more as he locked his arms. "You're one of the few who doesn't know what's going on," grinned Death Arms, traitorous liberation devotee. While Death Arms was grinning, Slide and Go could see the murderous rage hiding behind his eyes, and when he heard his words, he paled, his eyes growing wide in shock. "How," thought Slide and Go, "nobody even suspected me, much less about the fact that the Meta Liberation Army even existed." Slide and Go tried to think of some way to escape, to warn the others, but Death Arms had him in a perfect lock. If he tried to use his quirk to slide away, his lower half would move, but Death Arms had his neck locked into place. Should he try to go in any direction, he would end up breaking his neck and killing himself, or worse, ripping his neck and spinal cord away from his body. In the end, he could only surrender and hope for the best. Daruma Ejiko, who had gone through many aliases throughout the ages. At one point, he was Dr. Tsubasa, working at one of his privately owned clinic as a family physician, allowing him to sift through potential quirks for his master, all for one. Currently, he is Kyudai Garaki, founder and current chairman of the board for Jaku General Hospital. He was quirkless, and had many achievements that made him popular, including his philanthropic works of setting orphanages and nursing homes, as well as ensuring affordable health care. This was, of course, all an act and disguise to hide his true goals. Experimentation on live subjects for his beloved Nomus. By owning orphanages and nursing homes, he could siphon a few test subjects, and nobody would even notice. While it was against the Geneva Conventions, he could care less about those old rules. So long as nobody knew, he could break it without any care at all, and he spat on those archaic rules. His Nomu was the ultimate biological weapon, and he would never stop as it brought him joy, ignoring the screams of pain or cries for help, one including his grandson, but blood was no excuse for progress. His real reason for creating this hospital was for all the dead bodies that he could violate without anybody saying a word, and nobody ever questioned it. Progress is going well, hummed Garaki to himself as he walked down the hall to his personal office. In fact, the project should be completed in just under a month, and Shigaraki Tamura will be complete. I can't wait to dash. Why is it getting hot in here? Is the air conditioning unit not working? Garaki then noticed the source of the heat was actually coming from behind him when a rough voice rang out. Is it you? Garaki slowly turned around just to see Endeavor marching towards him, his flames burning brightly inside the hallway, along with other pro-heroes like Eraserhead and Present Mike. The maker of Nomus, the right-hand man of All for One, stated Endeavor, his flames growing even brighter with every step. Give yourself up, pawn of the devil. Garaki began panicking, trying to run away when Eraserhead's capture scarf grabbed onto his leg and tripped him onto the floor. Before Garaki could get up, Eraserhead's eyes locked onto Garaki's body, erasing his quirk. Immediately, they could see Garaki aging before their very eyes, meaning that the quirk registry he had put himself as quirkless was a lie. Based on their observation, they concluded that Garaki had some sort of youth quirk, or a quirk that slowed down his aging. Maybe it's why All for One has lived for so long, deduced Naomosa as he walked forward. Not only that, but the fact most black Nomus had super regeneration is rather suspicious. There are some quirks like it, but they're very rare quirks. To be able to give it to so many, one would suspect they were replicated, or even artificially created. That's not something any normal scientist could do now, is it? You've had a long time to study and experiment, and sold your services to All for One. Present Mike put his hand onto Garaki's shoulder. Man, that's pretty awesome, regenerating like that. It's like a hyper cheat, don't you think? He then threw Garaki into the ground before pulling him up to stare the man who had transformed their best friend, whom they thought was dead, into a Noma, who was currently known as Kurogiri. So why are you using it this way, old man? Present Mike was interrupted when a resident and nurse tried to intervene, unable to believe that Garaki was a villain. It was a reasonable doubt, as Garaki was the one who had created Jako Hospital, which boasted one of the best hospitals in Japan. The two were quickly herded away, where every patient and residents were being escorted out of the danger zone by heroes. Eraserhead, not one to let his guard down, quickly wrapped Garaki in his binding cloth, preventing him from moving. They had already figured out there were Nomus hidden in the base, but they knew the Nomus needed a command in order to act. Otherwise they were just empty husks without sentience. Now they had Garaki captured, ensuring he couldn't move nor give out his orders. So many people that you've toyed with and tossed aside, taking everything from them, said Eraserhead as he lifted up his goggles. Now it's our turn to take everything from you. Please have mercy on me, cried out Garaki. Have mercury on me, Mirko, who had broken into the morgue that was a restricted area to everyone but Garaki, noticed movement immediately through her sensitive hearing. Endeavor, warned Mirko, putting her hand up to her communicator, though smiling in excitement at the upcoming battle as Nomus appeared. Endeavor immediately understood the warning, but couldn't react in time as the ground beneath Garaki shattered as Nomus spilled out, one of them piercing through Garaki's side that would have killed anyone, except Garaki didn't seem surprised before his skin began to melt. Organisms created from double won't disappear even with erasure. It's excellent to know that. If you knew about duplication, then you should have been wary of it. Well, I suppose that would be expecting too much from you all, said Garaki before he dissolved into a muddy goop, showing that he had been a double that twice had created. Garaki had been inside his laboratory the whole time, laboriously working on his own masterpiece, Tamura Shigaraki, that he had let a double take care of every day. Still, the fact the annoying heroes had caught into his operation was frustrating. He would need to abandon the hospital, which made his heart and brain hurt. All his precious equipment was here, the quirks that he copied, experimented, and synthesized, and all the Nomus he had created. It had taken him so long to get to this point, back when he first became so interested in the human body and how quirks reacted and changed things. He had been the one to publish the quirk singularity theory, and was promptly ostracized by the scientific community. How those fools couldn't recognize his brilliance. Yet, one man believed him and gave him everything he could provide. All for One knew brilliance while society couldn't even see what was in front of them. So Garaki went through different processes, adopting different identities while gathering up quirks. First, as a coroner, where he could steal DNA from dead bodies without anyone asking, hoping to replicate or revive a quirk. Then, a family physician, where he could draw samples from live subjects, who knew nothing of his real self. Of course, having access to personal medical records meant he could provide all for one some interesting quirks should some come up. Then finally, as chairman of Jakko Hospital, where he could get live specimens 24/7 to test, a morgue to steal bodies with nobody being the wiser, and an underground laboratory that was hidden from everyone. His home base, so to speak. And now he had to abandon it lest he be captured. Garaki ran past the jars of living tissue with quirks still in them, computer screens of data compiling through it all, and dozens of Nomus he was still experimenting on, his eyes crying that he needed to leave his happy peaceful days, if not bloody, behind. "Johnny!" shouted Garaki as he found his tiny Nomu that had the warped quirk, taking its usual walk. "Warp Shigaraki and me out of here." Before the Nomu could comply, the door it had happened to be standing before was blasted away. The steel doors smashed into the Nomu named Johnny, instantly killing it as the door splattered its brain matter across the floor. Mirko had arrived, kicking the door down with her kicks after mowing down some Nomus with ease. "Are you the real one?" grinned Mirko, all while quickly noting everything within the room. What caught her attention were the Nomus still in some sort of pod, all of them colored black, meaning they were at least upper-tier Nomus, and there were quite a number of them. Still, all this would end if Garaki was caught. Shame the brat isn't with me for this. But he better be kicking ass, thought Mirko as she landed, noting with satisfaction the other parts of the door crashing into the glass holding the Nomus, cracking them open as the Nomus slumped down into the floor lifelessly. Garaki was frozen, watching his beloved Johnny dead on the floor. He had loved it more than his own biological family, as he had been the one to create it all by himself. It had been one of his first and most useful prototypes. He had even snuggled it, given it walks, and read it bedtime stories. "No!" cried Garaki as he watched not only his beloved Johnny, but more Nomus falling lifelessly into the floor, knowing he couldn't do anything to wake them up. They needed the proper stimulus for them to be active. "Think I found Garaki," said Mirko into her comms, getting a reply back. "Yeah, dunno if it's a clone, but a good kick should tell me." "Capture him," ordered Endeavor. "We'll be right behind you, after we take care of these Nomus." The hospital floor was suddenly flooded with Nomus attacking them, all of them 2 or more quirks as well as some sort of physical enhancement. Luckily, the others had managed to evacuate the hospital in time before they attacked. Crust, the number 6 hero, was charging through the morgue to chase after Mirko, who had gone ahead of them. As soon as more Nomus came out from the hidden passageways, Crust immediately used his quirk to create shields on his arms to cut his way through. "Quite a bit of them," noted a hero from behind him. "Yes, but we must break through to apprehend the evildoer," cried Crust with emotion. "By the way, I don't recognize you. I know you're an addition that Nizu insisted on having you come with us, along with your hooded apprentice, but I haven't gotten your name." "You can ask later," replied the female. "Focus on breaking through." "My apologies, a wrong time to ask in this situation," nodded Crust as he slashed through the Nomus. "Stop yapping and keep going," shouted another one accompanying them. "Tiger Bunny is there alone having fun without me." Crust decided to keep his mouth shut on the other one accompanying them. Though he was doubtful of the man, he couldn't help admit the man was passionate about a fight, even if for the wrong reasons. "Are you the real one?" shouted Mirko as she dashed over to Garaki. I'm real," cried Garaki as he tried to run, tears flowing out of his eyes that were being held by his goggles, snot flooding out of his nose. "I don't believe you. I should kick you to make sure," shouted Mirko as she got closer. Garaki looked panicked, but he managed to grab his cell phone inside the lab coat, trying to activate the pods. Though the Nomus still inside the pods were alive and high-end ones at that, they hadn't even been tested yet, not to mention it took 10 hours to stabilize Hood, the Nomu that had taken on Endeavor, after activation. There was no guarantee that the Nomu would be able to fight, but there was no time. Before Garaki could press on the final button, he felt Mirko's leg already on his arm, ready to crush it before he could press it. However, a small Nomus suddenly jumped out and bumped Mirko from the side, changing the trajectory of her kick ever so slightly that she missed. Mirko blinked in surprise at that, glancing over just what had bumped over, only for the said Nomu to suddenly create a duplicate of Garaki. Mirko quickly kicked through the duplicate and crashed into Nomu, only to realize her distraction could cost her. "Mocha!" cried out Garaki as another precious Nomu was crushed. "It's a miracle. Without even being ordered, you jumped in to protect me." With that, Garaki pressed down on his phone, activating all Nomus in the tank. Miruko's instinct blared at her when she saw the glass pods the Nomus were in suddenly shattered. Mirko kicked out, blocking/smashing two hands, but another hand grabbed her by the face and threw her up into the wall where the pipes and cables were. 5 High-end Nomus were awake, and the 2 who had their hands crushed by Miruko's kick were already healing. Not only that, but they started to talk, slowly using words before getting used to their vocal cords. "Kill the heroes," stated one of the Nomus. "Kill them all." Just as Crust managed to arrive at the scene, he was immediately besieged by the fattest Nomu, named Chubbs, blocking the entrance. Garaki took this time to run back to the lab where Tamura was, putting all his hopes on finishing the project as soon as possible. Each high-end Nomu had been specifically picked by Garaki using the body of the most battle-crazed or violent villains in order to fight the heroes. As Garaki was tapping away at the keyboard, Miruko's keen ears picked up on it. "So, you're still back there tapping away," grinned Mirko as she picked herself up. "That means you're stuck there." While picking herself up, she slyly let out a little spy bug that began to fly up into the air that she had hidden inside her voluminous hair. "How can she still move?" asked the only female Nomu named Woman, getting used to her vocal cords and tone. "Must be stopped." "Will kill," said the Nomu with robotic legs and armored head, aptly named Robot. "I cancelled out the impact with my legs," grinned Mirko as she kicked off the wall, launching herself above the Nomus before landing behind them all before dashing towards where Garaki was. As much as she wanted to fight the Nomus, the mission came first, and Mirko knew how to place her priorities. Suddenly, she found herself caught in bone-like antenna structures created from the Nomu named Ribby, who sprouted said trap from its antenna head. Woman liquefied herself, moving quickly in front of Mirko before solidifying herself to attack, while the Nomu with the elephant trunk named LF attacked from behind, hoping to crush Mirko. Mirko freed her legs before doing a split kick, stopping both Nomus in their tracks as the kicks hit their respective head and chin. Luna Ring. Utilizing her waist and lower body strength, Mirko spun, freeing herself from the trap while kicking Nomu's head. However, right before she spun, Ribby yanked on his antenna, slightly altering Mirko's kick. "TCH," scoffed Mirko as she freed herself, wincing in pain as Ribby had gotten a small hit in. Her kicks had been too shallow and off-center from the sudden movement, even if a normal person who had gotten such a kick would be down if not dead. With these Nomus, they could shrug it off and heal as if nothing had happened. "Bastard, out of my way!" roared Mirko as she dashed towards Ribby, dodging several protrusions from his antenna that tried to spear her. Ribby suddenly used another quirk, his rib cage expanding to protect himself and, most importantly, his head. Mirko didn't care as she went for a kick. Suddenly, she felt something grip her left arm and twist it, breaking all the bones inside said arm while twisting the skin beyond normal limits. "Won't sit still," said Robot, using his other quirk to create a small spatial distortion right where Mirko's left arm was. "Ow, that hurts," roared Mirko, uncaring what would happen to her left arm while she still went forward with her kick. Robot began to twist his left wrist more and was about to clench when a bullet slammed into his head, followed by 2 arrows, one into his bicep and one into his left hand. The bullet was a high-caliber round as it penetrated through his helmet, while the arrows pierced through the flesh. The projectiles interrupted his quirk, releasing his grip on Mirko's arm. Mirko slammed her kick into Ribby, forcing it into the ground, almost bypassing his defense. Utilizing the recoil, Mirko spun in the air, landing right onto Robot's shoulders, her knees on the Nomu's shoulders. While an enviable position for Mirko's fans, this was not one of those moments. "Guys who suddenly attack from far away tend to be weak at close combat," grinned Mirko. "Die," replied Robot robotically as his eyes began to glow ominously before firing a high-intensity beam from said eyes at Mirko's head. "Yeah," grinned Mirko as she leaned back, dodging the eye blasts, whirling her body around the Nomu while her feet locked together under the Nomu's chin. "When it's time to die, we die. But right now, it's not mine." Luna T. Harris. With a roar, Mirko pulled, her thighs bulging as she ripped Robot's neck right off his body and slammed it into the ground, pulverizing the brain matter into oblivion. Mirko took a deep breath as she grinned, ignoring the pain her left arm was giving off, the adrenaline overpowering it for now. Though she definitely needed it to get it looked at, it wasn't completely gone. There was still a chance for Recovery Girl to heal it up, though she wasn't sure if pulverized bone fragments were healable. Mirko managed to get her long hair around the said arms and tied it so it wouldn't flop as much in her fight, though she was tempted to just tear it off and be done with it. If I can stop you by crushing your heads, then you're easier to deal with than the average villain, grinned Mirko as she saw the other Nomus starting to stand up, regenerating their injuries. I live every day expecting to die, so I won't have any regrets when I do. A bunch of zombies like you won't be able to kill the hero, Mirko. Few minutes prior, Crust grunted as Chubbs continued to push him back, unable to force a way through. This isn't good, thought Crust. Mirko is all alone, and from what I saw, there were 4 more high-end Nomus like this one. If any of them were like the one Endeavor fought, she's in trouble. Crust created giant shields, pushing them into Chubbs to push back, but the Noma pushed back. This pitiful living corpse, cried out Crust. You can't finish me off with that, grunted Chubbs with a roar. Then it's my turn, said a voice from behind and above Crust. Before Chubbs could reply, a fist punched right into Chubbs' face. Chubbs flinched for a second, and wanted to reply before another punch was volleyed into his face, followed by a barrage of punches, all aiming for his face. Come on, let's go, shouted Rappa as his punches began to pick up speed. I'm just getting warmed up. Chubbs immediately used another quirk, his teeth transforming into metal to give him more durability. However, they broke upon impact from Rappa's punches, confusing him until he saw just what Rappa was wearing. The gauntlets Rappa was wearing were created by Melissa herself, the newly created full gauntlet, to increase his punching power while also keeping himself safe. Not only that, but Crust was able to time every single damn punch with a jagged shield that was pointed forward to add more piercing power. Hehe, when I heard I was teaming up with a shield, I thought it would be boring like the time I was with Tenai. You're a totally better shield than him, roared Rappa as he kept punching, thanks to his height that he punched over Crust, though the man did duck a little to give him more room. And I thought a criminal like yourself wouldn't have such passion, replied Crust. Come, put more into it. Release that passion. Don't gotta tell me twice, grinned Rappa as he began to punch even faster, ignoring the pain coming from his shoulders telling him to take a break, using the adrenaline to overpower it. Ever since he had been caught, Rappa had been free to work out and improve his punches even more. Chubbs felt himself being pushed back by the combo and was outraged. Right at the entrance, Chubbs managed to grab hold of the edges, preventing himself from being pushed out, though leaving some tiny space, but not enough for a person to slip through. Rappa, Crust, push him right, ordered the dark blue-haired woman. Rappa grunted as he added some left hooks to shift him slightly while Crust created a row of hexagonal shields to give some more leverage. It still wasn't enough for a person to slip in, but enough for some projectiles to go through. Suddenly, Kana, who had been in disguise, activated her quirk, transforming her right arm into a rifle while her disciple/apprentice Barrows formed a bow with hers, pulling out some arrows in her quiver. Without hesitation, both shot through the gap, curving the bullet and arrows to slam into Robot's head and arm. Both Kana and Barrows had scouters feeding them live information of Mirko's position. When they saw her being cornered, they knew they had to do something. With the tiny gap given to them, the two fired projectiles at Robot, giving Mirko time to not only save her arm but completely destroy Robot. Still, they were trapped until they could get Chubbs out of the way, who wasn't letting go anytime soon. Mirko gritted her teeth as she fought 3 high-end Nomus by herself. The Noma Chubbs blocking the doorway had shoved himself back into the door with the help of LF. None of my attacks are hitting, thought Mirko to herself as Ribby dodged her kick. I know my own body well. I'm not slowing down, but rather they're getting used to their own body now. They're awake. After dodging a few more attacks, Mirko gave a small grin. She would have loved to continue fighting, but she had a job to do. Finding an opening, Mirko rushed away towards where Garaki was. Still trying to get to the doctor? Pointless, scoffed Ribby as he sent out his antennas to delay Mirko while Woman and LF caught up to her. Mirko dodged the antennas, but her hair was caught by LF. Woman was already opening her jaws to bite Mirko's leg. Suddenly, a red blur came crashing down through the ceiling, and yet no hole had been created. Power! Shouted Mirko as he punched Woman right on her brain with no warning whatsoever, causing the Nomu to freeze. Mirko had been included as part of the Jaku raid, escorting the patients outside, when the Nomus started appearing. After helping take care of some, Mirko went to the top of the building, with Night Eye guiding him just where to stand before telling him to phase downwards, precisely calculating how long he needed to phase to reach the secret basement lab. Mirko immediately phased away, rushing towards Ribby, who had been caught by surprise before focusing his antennas at Mirko in reflex. But Mirko phased through all his attacks before punching Ribby. Ribby expanded his rib cage to protect himself, only for Mirko's fist to phase through it and punch him in the head. However, as much as Mirko trained himself, the Nomus had been enhanced to take on much stronger attacks. "Nice job, brat," grinned Mirko as she yanked her head forward, ignoring her hair being pulled out. "Now get out of here to safety." Mirko ran forward, adrenaline surging as she used her quirk and her muscles to chase after Garaki before seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Jumping into the air, Mirko's leg muscles bulged as she began her attack to crush the tube containing Shigaraki. Ribby quickly sent his antennas after Mirko while the other two distracted Mirko, who couldn't get close. At the same moment that Mirko had appeared, Endeavor and Eraserhead had arrived at the entrance of the lab, where Rappa and Crust were trying to push Chubbs back. With Eraserhead erasing Chubbs' quirk, Endeavor had no trouble blasting Chubbs away from the entrance. Ribby focused on trying to ensnare Mirko, only to be tackled and punched by Endeavor. However, he managed to shield himself in time to avoid being completely obliterated. Before Eraserhead could erase Ribby's quirk, Woman, who had finally gotten full control and use of her body, dodged all the attacks directed at her, ignoring the few that hit her as her super regeneration repaired it, before building up liquid within her thighs. She used another quirk to rupture it, sending out pressurized water bullets at the heroes, forcing Crust to use his quirk to protect everyone. The attack distracted Eraserhead and Endeavor long enough for Ribby to regain control of his antenna to attack Mirko. Mirko was high up in the air, committing everything to this one attack. Her heel slammed into the tube, causing it to crack. As she continued to push down, an antenna stabbed her waist before reeling her back, causing Mirko's Luna arc to fall short, but enough to cause the liquid within the tube to start leaking. As she was pulled back, a bullet and arrow flew right past her, slamming into the tube, causing it to leak even more, causing Garaki to panic. Ribby threw Mirko into Endeavor, sending him flying back a bit. "Finish him off," shouted Mirko as she coughed out blood. "Shigaraki and the old fart are in there. We can't let them wake him up." Endeavor quickly began treating Mirko with emergency first aid while searing her wounds shut with his fire to avoid having her bleed to death. Just as he finished and was about to charge forward, he saw a woman leaping towards him with her jaws wide open, ready to bite Endeavor. Luckily, her charge was interrupted by Kana and Barrows, firing projectiles from a safe distance, with Mirko standing by, ready to intervene. Eraserhead was busy trying to erase Nomus quirks before planning out what needed to be done, while all the other heroes had their hands full. "Mike! Xless," shouted Eraserhead, "you two go on ahead." The two nodded and began rushing towards the door, only for Ribby to quickly stand in front of them. "Don't think it'll be that," began Ribby, only to be tackled by Rappa as well as a shield shot from Crust. "You're the one who hurt Tiger Bunny like that," bellowed Rappa, ganging up on her like that. "Let's see how you like it this time." With a roar, Rappa pounded onto Ribby's face, hoping to turn it into paste. Ribby tried to stab Rappa with his antenna, only for Crust to create a shield to block his attacks while letting Rappa continue his rampage. "Good shit," grinned Rappa in thanks. "Man, you're a much better shield than tonight that I don't mind working with you." "I'm glad to hear that," shouted Crust. "Perhaps you'd be interested in working at my agency once you served your sentence." "I'll hold you on that promise if you can promise me to give me a good fight every now and then," laughed Rappa. With the passageway free, Present Mike and Xless were able to make their way through the tunnel, coming up just as Garaki was about to wake Tamura up with an electric shock through his phone. Present Mike leaped over some pipes before using his quirk to amplify his voice, sending a shockwave right into the tube. The amount of power he put into it not only shattered the tube, but also broke pipes and shattered screens around the area while Garaki was sent flying up before hitting the ground. As the tube shattered, a lifeless Tamura Shigaraki slumped into the cold floor unmoving and unreactive. Garaki was about to cry, but Present Mike moved in and punched Garaki, making sure the mad scientist standing before him was the real one, while venting all his emotions into that one strike. Xless moved, checking on Tamura to realize that he had no heartbeat. The final phase of the experiment involved putting Tamura in a death-like state with an electrical shock through the solution being the catalyst to wake him up. With Garaki now apprehended, it would be easy to secure Tamura. At another location, Gunga Mountain Villa. "Let's go," declared Edge Shot, leading this operation. At his word, hundreds of heroes, sidekicks, and students with provisional licenses charged forward towards the villa, where the main headquarters of the PLF was located. While most of the first years were allocated as the rear guard, some were included in the front line due to their abilities and quirks. "Why am I here?" cried Denki as he charged out with the others. "Why aren't the monster trio part of this raid? Where's Midoriya?" While others consoled him and praised him, some couldn't wonder where Izuku was. He had been missing ever since his overseas internship. Back at the rear guard, Toshinori was taking control of the situation via comms from Melissa despite being a retired hero. And despite the fact he was retired, all the heroes didn't try to pull rank, knowing Toshinori still had proper training and knowledge that would be useful. "Be prepared for anything," said Toshinori, making even Mineta, who had been relaxing on a rock, to sit up straight. The respect he garnered was still there amongst the students and heroes. While we wish for Plan A to go without a hitch, there is no excuse for not being able to switch to Plan B because it was unexpected. A hero must be vigilant whenever on duty. Everyone in the reserves nodded, getting ready for anything that would happen. As soon as Cementos jumped into the front and began manipulating the cement, did Skeptic notice the raid. He had been on his laptop, monitoring Hawks at all times, in case he was a double agent. He had been suspicious that the current number 2 hero would fall right into their lap and follow their ideology without complaints. The 20 micro-device spy chips he had personally installed, along with a few hidden ones he didn't mention to Hawks, showed no signs of suspicious activities. He had far underestimated just what Hawks could do with his feathers, having written clues far away from Skeptic's devices, in another room in fact while he was with Twice. In fact, the only reason he had a suspicion that the heroes were coming was because he happened to be passing by a window and looking outside in time to see Cementos manipulating the cement in front of him, followed by hundreds more coming from the forest. How did they get past my security systems? They're the best ones that only I personally had devised and surpass all others, thought Skeptic, ignoring his black marks against La Brava. And why didn't we catch note of this? Did Hawks somehow get word out? Damn it, this isn't my fault. It's Bubagwara's fault. The building's frontal wall suddenly split and collapsed before Skeptic could even shout out a warning. Skeptic began Barker orders, getting the groups together while having someone run down to the underground assembly hall to warn them about the danger. He would have tried sending a message, only to find himself being blocked. "They got us good," chuckled the commander of the PLF, "then let's shake it up." "Voltage!" exclaimed Skeptic as the said man walked forward with more people gathering behind him. "This happened because we were waiting on Shigaraki," scoffed Voltage as he walked forward calmly, taking a deep breath of his cigarette. "We should just start our liberation and revolution." Taking out a high-powered taser and activating it onto his hands, Voltage used his quirk, Amplivolt, to take in the current and amplify it. His hands turned into blue lightning as he held the power in his hands. "Numbers are meaningless in the face of my metability," bragged Voltage. "My quirk reigns supreme as one of the strongest ones." Supreme Discharge, Thundernet. A large amount of electricity was discharged towards the rushing heroes, threatening to envelop most if not all of the front line. However, before the lightning even touched any of the heroes, the lightning was suddenly diverted into one location. Denki had noticed the attack and rushed into the front line, using his new gear he had gotten on request. Some boots that, when electricity was applied, would increase his running speed by activating the small fans underneath the boots, propelling him forward as he ran. Raising his finger, Denki created a spark of static electricity. That was enough to attract all the lightning created from Voltage right into Denki's finger like a lightning rod, letting him absorb the attack directed at everyone else. "Midoriya, while you're not here, I'll be your wingman and help support others until you get back. But get back soon, man. I don't want to hold up the fort," thought Denki as he neutralized the enemy's attack. As Cementos was completely destroying the villa, exposing all the PLF members out into the open, Voltage gave Denki a glance and scowled. "Fine, but how many millions of volts can you stand?" shouted Voltage as he grabbed 5 more tasers out, intending to use it on himself to amplify the voltage. Before he could do so though, the number 4 hero, Edge Shot, suddenly appeared in front of him. "Ninpo, 1000 Sheet Pierce." Edge Shot used his quirk, Folder Body, to turn himself razor-sharp string and pierce through not only Voltage's lung, but a few others standing right behind him. The sudden strike caused all those who had been hit to suddenly seize up in pain and felt themselves trying to gasp for air. Midnight followed up, ripping her sleeves apart to let out her quirk. She quickly moved through the crowd, using fans to help accelerate the sleeping gas amongst the crowd. With everyone trying to take deep breaths for air, they were easily put to sleep, letting Kamui would wrap it up. Shit, even the regiment leaders are being taken down, cursed a PLF member. Well, if we go down, then we're taking down those damn dogs of the... He didn't get to finish as he found himself sinking into the floor, along with a good amount of other members, thanks to Juzo, aka Mudman. Some tried to escape, only to find themselves coughing, trying to dislodge the fungi that Kanoko, aka Shemage, had started to grow, as well as on their skin. At the same time, the secret exits to the underground assembly hall had been destroyed by other heroes. In another part of the building, Hawks had cornered Twice into a corner, his feather surrounding the said villain. Hawks had been keeping an eye specifically on Twice because of how scary his quirk, Double, was. Why? Cried out Twice. Why does this keep happening? He kept flashing back to when he brought Kai Chisaki back to the League of Villains, only to have Magna killed and Mr. Compress to lose his left limb. Why did I trust you? I felt bad for you, cried Twice as Hawks stood there. I know, said Hawks. That's why I'm doing this. I'll turn you over to the authorities, but I can tell you're not a bad person. You've just been unlucky. Once you get a fresh start, I'll be there to help you every step of the way. Silence reigned for a second before Twice sneered, shut up. A fresh start? That's a load of crap. I stopped caring about myself for a long time already. I don't want to fight you, said Hawks loudly, sending a feather to pierce through the mask, revealing Twice's face. Twice immediately began flooding the room with doubles of himself as he replied, well, isn't that just convenient for you? My soul only exists for others' happiness, declared Twice, his eyes flooded with tears as did his doubles. Sad man's parade. Hawks didn't flinch as his feathers mercilessly cut down the doubles, leaving Twice by himself. Please, just come peacefully, said Hawks once more. I won't let my emotions trip over my emotions, but I do like you and want to be your friend. Like hell you are, roared Twice as he created duplicates of Shigaraki, Himiko, and the others, only for them to be mercilessly cut down. Twice didn't give up as he took a step forward, creating doubles as Hawks kept cutting them down, leaving Twice relatively unharmed. Twice didn't care as he kept charging forward, extending his tape measure to cut Hawks. Hawks didn't hesitate to cut through the measuring tape, but instead of cutting into Twice with his feathers to leave him incapacitated, Hawks cut into just the clothes on his chest before slamming a special bullet into his chest. One that night I had kept in a personal safe after the Yakuza raid before finally deciding on just whom to use it on. It had taken a lot of planning to get it to Hawks without being discovered by Skeptic. The contents of the bullet was released into Twice, who looked puzzled at why his chest was bare but not bleeding. Don't tell me he meant that he actually likes me that way, thought Twice. I don't like you that way, shouted Twice. I'm flattered, but take me to dinner first. Twice tried to use his quirk before noticing something was missing. He couldn't feel his quirk, no matter how much he tried to concentrate. It felt like it was never there to begin with. Not only that, but the second voice in his head seemed to grow quieter, as if speaking over a distance that was increasing. What did you do to me? Shouted Twice in confusion before looking down to see a shiny red syringe bullet. He looked at it in confusion before realizing just what it was. Don't worry, it's not permanent from what we've studied. Just enough to stop you from using your quirk to overwhelm us all, said Hawks as he subdued Twice into the ground. I wasn't lying when I said I'd be there every step of the way. I intend to keep that promise. You guys aren't heroes, spat out Twice. None of you are. It's always like this, abandoning the ones who are down out onto the streets, taking advantage of the situation. Twice slowly breathed in and out before continuing, Toga-chan, she wrapped me in her handkerchief gently. But this is the second time that I've gotten everyone caught up in a trap like this. She probably won't do this kindness to me again, but that's alright. Even if I can't do anything right, the least I can do is try to protect their happiness, shouted Twice in frustration and anger. There's more than one way to do that, said Hawks, and you'll be able to tell them yourself. Suddenly, the door was blasted open from behind them, and a stream of blue fire slammed into the two. Surprised, but still alert, Hawks managed to push himself and Twice away from the blast, tumbling on the ground. Before he could get up, Hawks felt a boot stomping on his skull, breaking his sunglasses. There's no need, laughed Dobby as he applied pressure onto Hawks's head. I heard him loud and clear. Looks like you tripped up after all by emotions if you failed to notice me, hero. With that emphasis, Dabi let out a burst of blue flames from his boots, intending to incinerate Hawks, only to feel his foot suddenly slip as the head he was stepping on disappeared. "No way," stated Dabi in slight shock as Hawks tumbled away from the flames with Twice still in his arms. "But whatever. You lost a lot of your weapons now." Hawks winced as he knew that a lot of his feathers had been burned away from Dabi's surprise attack. He had used most of them to not only help himself escape rather unscathed, but also to protect Twice. "You nearly burned up your friend," riposted Hawks as he recalled all remaining feathers back to himself, taking note of what he could use. "It's fine," shrugged Dabi uncaringly. "You heroes are always known to save a life in an instant without hesitation." "Such sarcasm," spat out Hawks. "You're acting as though you knew I wasn't one of you. So how did you figure it out?" "There was nothing to figure out," scoffed Dabi. "I never trusted you from the start." Hawks merely stood silent, trying to recover his breath while his mind raced on what he could do. "Twice, what are you doing?" "Get up and go out," said Dabi lazily. "Just one of you will be able to take out all those heroes outside." Twice, who had been looking down at his chest the whole time, slowly looked up. "I can't," whispered Twice. "My quirk, it's gone." He took it away. Dabi blinked, wildly looking at Twice before noticing a shiny red bullet syringe on the floor. The same bullet that Shigaraki had confiscated when they raided the police transport carrying overhaul and a single bullet, much to their confusion as they were sure there was more. "So you heroes took the others. So much for acting like goody-goody two-shoes if you're willing to use a bullet butchered from a little girl," mocked Dabi before firing another stream of fire at Hawks, who dodged it while taking Twice with him as he was in the line of fire as well. Hey, you should be more careful. You could really burn up your friend here," said Hawks as he rolled on the floor, smothering out the fire on his clothes. "He doesn't mind," said Dabi carelessly. "Plus, he's expendable now that he doesn't have a quirk. Least he can do is distract you now." Twice froze for a second, not sure what to do before leaping onto Hawks to hold him down. "See, he knows what to do like a good dummy," said Dabi before shooting out another stream of flames without mercy. Twice smiled as the stream of fire came closer and closer before realizing just how close to death he was. His life began flashing before his eyes in front of the flames before realizing he didn't want to die yet. Upon realizing this, Twice unconsciously loosened his grip on Hawks. Hawks, who was hypersensitive to such motions with his feather, immediately took action. Frankly speaking, Hawks would have jumped out of the window to dodge the attack, leaving Dabi to burn Twice up, who he was sure wouldn't care about friendly fire. That was just how Dabi was from what Hawks assessed of him during their brief meetings. A sociopath who would just kill anyone that was in his way of his goal, including his allies. Dabi would just say that he felt awful and remorseful before going on his way. Instead, Hawks turned around and grabbed Twice, carrying him out the window while shielding him with his own body and feathers. The explosion carried the two of them out of the room towards the fighting. "Hold on tight," shouted Hawks as he used his feathers to glide the two of them towards safety. "Why?" questioned Twice as he found himself flying in the air with Hawks. "Why save me? You could have just escaped by yourself without hurting yourself." "I guess it's because what Dabi said is true," coughed Hawks. "I'm a hero. It's in my nature to save a life without hesitation. I said I was going to help you, and I meant it. I can't let you just die after what I said." Before Twice could say anything, both of them heard the wall breaking above them. A second later, Dabi jumped off to chase them. Himiko and Mr. Compress were busy dodging a hero named Eel Boy who seemed to have been specifically tailored to fight them. Himiko's evasive maneuvers were proving fruitless against the hero, who seemed to have sensory capabilities that surpassed her ability to read her enemies and predict their weak spots. "Gotcha!" shouted Eel Boy as he fired two tracking eels at them. Himiko threw a blanket that blocked her figure, causing Eel Boy to sneer slightly. Just a blanket wouldn't stop him from tracking her down. Suddenly, an explosion engulfed his eels, causing him to reel back in pain. Compress, who had been standing behind Himiko, saw her transform into Katsuki before raising her disguised palm to let out a chain of explosions. The first one forced Eel Boy to reel back in pain while the rest slammed into him, sending him flying away with a smoke trail. "What?" blinked Compress before Himiko's disguise began to melt. She had only consumed a tiny bit of blood that Katsuki had given her, and she had a limited supply. Right at that moment though, she looked out towards the fighting just in time to see Hawks free falling with Twice in his hands. Seeing Twice crying, Himiko couldn't help but react by using the last bits of time in her transformation to blast herself right into the two, tackling Hawks and twice in the process. "Let Jean go," hissed Himiko, ready to bite Hawks when she felt something extremely hot above her. Himiko looked up before her eyes widened when she saw Dobby throwing a blast of fire at them, uncaring that Twice was in danger because of it. Using the last bits of the blood within her, Himiko blasted them to the side, just barely dodging Dobby's attack. "Himiko Toga," whispered Hawks to Himiko, "take some of my blood." Before Himiko could question why, Hawks continued, "I know about Katsuki Bakugo." That forced Himiko to push away her questions as she bit into Hawks, taking in some blood before transforming into Hawks with wings included. She had no idea how to use the wings though, but Hawks already had that planned out. Using whatever remaining feathers he had left, he had Himiko spread her wings while guiding said wings into a gliding formation, allowing all three of them to glide away from the fight. "Humph, he got away," scowled Dobby before shrugging, "Oh well. It's not like they'll disrupt what I've got planned." The trio managed to fly into the forest before harshly crashing through several trees and finally landing onto the ground. "Ow, that hurt," cried Twice before managing to pick himself up, rushing over to Himiko. "Himiko-chan, are you alright? You're hurt again." "I'm sorry, it's my fault that the heroes are attacking us." Himiko accepted the handkerchief that Twice was using to wipe her cheeks before confronting Hawks, pulling her daggers out. "What do you want?" hissed Himiko. "Easy now. I told Babaigawara-san that I wanted to help him to get a fresh start, and I meant it," said Hawks, wincing at all his injuries and burns. "That also includes you. I'm well aware of your connection to Katsuki Bakugo. Been suspicious the whole time, though I only got wind of it really when you secretly sent that letter to his family. I was surprised to see it was a paid vacation for 3, and figured you had a trap set out for the boy. Then I realized that you went through all this trouble while making sure nobody else knew that you had done so. You had Babaigawara-san use his quirk to make a copy of you inside the PLF while you snuck out." Himiko gave Twice a small glare, who raised his hand in surrender before pondering why Himiko had asked him to do that. Then he realized that there was something going on between her and Katsuki. A forbidden love, thought Twice before squealing silently in excitement within himself. Out of all the people in the PLF, he was closest to Himiko. Her happiness was his too. Lastly, Bakugo came to me himself and confessed to me in private about this. He figured out the code I sent out. He practically demanded me to let you go so he could arrest you himself, chuckled Hawks. So I made plans to arrest Babaigawara and then somehow get you, but that worked out on itself. We're lucky you tackled us, otherwise Dobby would have incinerated us. Now we just need the others to finish arresting the rest, and this will be a success, thought Hawks as he tried to apply some salves he had hidden in his pockets. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey today. I hope you enjoyed exploring the fascinating what-if scenario of Deku. The possibilities were truly mind-blowing. If you found this video entertaining and thought-provoking, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to me and inspires me to bring you more captivating content in the future. Stay tuned for more exciting what-if stories and other amazing videos coming your way. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep embracing the power of imagination.